Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're live.
Oh, nice.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Souping live stream. We've just got
Yay.
4 of us here today, and we've got somebody new joining us. Anna, do you want to take it away?
Sure, yeah, my name's Anna, and yeah, I'm joined. I'm joining. I have joined all of the tenses. Yeah. What else do I say?
What sort of things do you write?
Yeah, I write mostly nonfiction, like critical pieces on culture generally. Yeah, film mostly, but culture generally, I guess. So we're doing some creative introductions for one another. Some of the people were assigned to introduce through a piece of writing are not here, but some of them are, and we've used it as a chance to get to know each other and also to kind of put our first impressions down and see what happens. An experiment, if you will. So yeah, is there anyone who is dying to go first?
I believe you were last time. Do you want to take the reins on that again?
Yeah, I can go first. Get it out of the way. I'm kidding.
Last time, I mean the first recording attempt for this watching as well.
Yeah. Take one. Yeah, so I'm introducing Leah, which is fun. Leah and I have actually known each other for a while. We've lived together for 3 years, so I know her pretty well.
You should be an expert then.
I'm an expert.
Yeah, it's a bold claim.
A degree in Leah. Okay, so I kind of structured it or wrote it like a scene in a film, kind of, because you need like special like software to actually write, I think, like in a proper script format. So it's very loosely based on a script, but it's kind of, it's not really anything. It's just a moment of Leah, and it's set in our old flat. Good times.
Oh, I'm excited for this.
Okay, I'll just start reading it. Okay. So it starts: interior, a living room decorated with mismatched furniture. There's a beige carpet worn from years of rented use, covered with a patterned red rug. The room is mismatched in a distinctly young adult way, made comfortable by people who have yet to own all the necessities. Made homely by discarded furniture they stumbled upon on a walk home. Obvious rips and stains half-heartedly covered by blankets and cushions hastily bought in Freshers' Week. Leah walks through the front door. Her boots are laced with a burgundy ribbon. She's carrying a tote bag bursting with food, all emblazoned with the familiar 30% off sticker. She balances an assortment of small cardboard boxes in her arms, walking purposely to the kitchen table, already strewn with library books, a half-eaten packet of bourbons, and unopened mail. Leah, brightly, look at what was on sale. Oh, nice. Oh, we were running out of soy sauce. Good shout. Are those boxes from the deli? Leah, yes, we had leftover chocolate cake, so I brought some home. The chef is using this new brand of chocolate. I can't tell if it's better or worse. It kind of shifts the flavors around. Ooh, interesting. Leah, yeah, but hey, free chocolate cake. A comfortable silence blankets the room. Leah walks to the kitchen, starts shuffling bottles and Tupperwares in the fridge with a focusness both characteristic and necessary considering the state of the fridge. How was your day? Leah, good. I got to go to the supermarket. That's it.
Is this at me because you know I love to just stand in the supermarket and
He loves to go to the supermarket.
The supermarket is so underrated.
Yeah. But the thing about going to the supermarket with Leah is that she loves it so much that she's just taken in by, she won't buy everything, but she just loves to peruse everything.
Yeah.
So it's like a real, you're really committing to an adventure, an experience.
What's your favourite supermarket, Leah?
See, I really did like the gas station co-op next to our house because they played like shitty music. And you could
is it a big co-op or a small co-op?
It was a small co-op, like one of those little ones.
Okay.
It has like 4 aisles. It's only busy at like 4 p.m. You can just go there. There's nobody there. Nobody will interrupt you. You kind of know all the staff, but they'll like never acknowledge you know each other. And you know, just have a little cry, have a little laugh. You can live your whole life in the supermarket, which is
What's your favorite aisle
my
or
favorite
section?
aisle. Ooh. It's not so much to do with what's in the aisle, but spatially, I love the one right in the middle of the supermarket because everybody's always going around the perimeter. So it's to do with like space and place rather than what's.
I like that.
Yeah.
One, alone. Back when God brought us into the world alone, he failed to consider mothers. The world is born from your mother, and the first sound it makes is heard downstairs in the kitchen. I don't need to tell you what that sound is like, you can already hear it. The clink of a mug on the countertop, the rinse-stick run of cereal into a bowl, the louder bash of a pan being put back into a drawer. Alone is a reach for an untouchable lie. In the supermarket, it means brushing hands with someone else as you reach for the same bag of spinach. It means nodding pleasantries to the cashier, who's probably more qualified than most to complain about feeling alone. Loneliness is pre-packaged and altogether too loud and too bright to be mistaken for peaceful. Alone in your room is still the sound of your mother, padding up the stairs to turn on the hallway light at the exact moment it becomes too dark to see without it. Maybe without such a sturdy soundboard to send ideas backwards, nothing can mean anything. Because when you stand by her plot on the hill, it is too quiet. The hush of a million billion blades of fine-tuned grass leaning to listen. The longer you last, the more you hear her voice in your head mingled with your own, acting on the sudden desire to sweep the kitchen floor or weeping at the sound of a littered countertop. There are never enough forks or teaspoons. Your name in print is lost to a crossword sea of newspaper letters. The well-trodden road is full of strangers reciting the same lines. It is the opposite of being alone. 2. Belly. I am here on my belly wrestling with a root of ivy, and I have never felt more present in my life. It takes every ounce of me to dredge the plant up out of the earth. The space left behind looks bigger the further away I am. It is a magic trick. When I come back outside after getting a glass of water, the bald spot under the hedge has spread and I no longer recognise my own garden. I repeat this rhythm in small portions as the weeks get warmer. My belly spends its time pressed flush against the cold stone in the yard as I yank intruders from the soil. When I'm back inside, I watch from the window over the sink as the birds begin to arrive. I do all the hard work for them, churning and sifting up the nutrients of old soil. The blackbirds fill their stomachs. In the mirror, I see my own belly in pink light, protruding a rounded slope over the waistband of my trousers. It is soft and disappointing. It sculpts itself outwards. It disregards the calculation that allows it to be valued most in absence. Outside, the birds feed on their equivalent of pasta and wine. At night, the window over the sink is a reflection. I don't bother to switch on the big light as I open the fridge. Its glow is enough guidance for my hand, which reaches for leftover eggs and cheese. I think about how in songs and movies people always dance by fridge light. My feet sound like wet slaps against the cold tiles. Feasting in darkness hides a whole manner of sins, like my face and my lips and my belly. Through the window, the nightbirds watch as I eat until I am no longer hungry. Three, placemats. When you set the table using placemats, you lay a border of where things are meant to be. They are the graceline where spillage is allowed. You'll have to forgive me for the crumbs which spray across the dinner table when I laugh at your jokes. Sometimes I want to shrink down small enough that our placemats feel whole kilometres long. I want to become so small that if I leave one here in the sun, the space underneath it will remain like a sentinel and collect all those men who couldn't take the heat. We grew up with invisible lines running all over the city. This wouldn't be much different. If I was small, a year would feel long again. I might be able to forget all the times we ate without placemats on the sofa. Have you counted how many glasses I have broken in the time you have known me? A place to rest without disruption. Boundaries. I'll race you up the table legs and see how the lines have shifted since we last looked. Lately we have been using the good plates. We eat at the table and discuss our day. The washing machine has started to smell funny. We almost always eat from the healthy aisles in the supermarket. Now I am spilling less, and we don't need placemats in the way we used to. We keep them for special occasions. It is all a matter of show. Their outline is scorched onto the tabletop and onto my mind's eye, marking where it's safe to land and where it's not. Good is better than perfect. You'll still have to forgive me when I knock over the soy sauce with my elbow.
I love that there's a second Orla joining us.
Ew.
Okay, wait.
I'm transferring from phone to laptop. My phone is going to die, but I'm doing it seamlessly.
Okay.
Well, we could all
excited.
do that and really pad out the audience that we have going. Double
Just
up.
speak to each other.
Ah!
Wow.
So much about duality.
I'll pick up the baton. We can pass it around a little bit because I have Orla and that makes it quite nice.
Oh yeah, well done.
And maybe Orla can read her piece on Deirdre and just put Luke's name in there. See what happens.
That would be lovely. I'm sure it'd be much more bubbly.
So Orla and I did like a little tarot card reading together for her piece, which was a lot of fun. We just did like a little 3-card spread doing like the past, the present, the future. And what I've written for her doesn't quite track like what the reading said, but kind of tries to capture the spirit of the cards and also maybe a little bit of the spirit of Orla. So I'm gonna read it out to you all. Orla. The Page of Wands, meaning she who aspires, lyric, lovely, arising in the east. A golden acorn sings through morning. It burns in an arpeggio, thin and winsome, coalescing into being. See the page's hands reach to play the infant sun's air with the skill of a piper, the smoke cresting a high note on the wind. Oh, anticipatory is the page, early, who wishes to rush the dawn, and in haste, for she has left her pipes at home. But the world is still young. She finds a lyre among the reeds. The Page of Wands portends an auspicious figure. She gathers prosperity in her hands. Orla, lion-eyed, sing to me your vision. 6 of Cups, meaning lucid, eyelid, a measure of balance. Enter this sanctum. Observe, twin tessellated pools, celadon-hued, 2 glass flutes. From the ice, a pair of jewels. Mist in the blue hours cools to wet the undersides of low lanterns, reminding you the nature of rest is temporary. Happiness hangs, lizard slow, suspended, clean as the scent of cold air. The 6 of Cups sits in harmony. Each motion ensures just enough. Orla, ornate whirlpool, you hold running water impossibly in your hands. 7 of Swords, meaning poise or strategy, nearly the same weapon, or will. The hour turns 7 and harmony takes flight, violent as blood-keen gulls. Here shown, how to become surrounded, as in hurricane, as in defensive maneuver, as in salt bird caught in wind-throwing grapple. A precipice, unresolved. The 7 of Swords is a power struggle. Do you believe in the myth of winning? Orla, are you yet formidable?
Ooh, I really liked that.
There she is.
You got her.
Transferring again, but oh, it's so lovely. I'd seen the first part before.
Oh, we can
I
hear
did
you now.
the first part that you did before, so I was like quite excited to see how that developed, especially, and I was like, oh my god, how's this gonna? And it's so, it feels very, I feel very inspired. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, that could be me.
What'd you get, Gail?
Like I have a long way to
good.
develop into it, which is really, really lovely. I think it's like a nice.
Celebrity audience relationships are inherently uneven, necessarily sliding into a transactional cycle. They are, after all, creations of capitalism. We watch them, keen to grasp onto the parts that make sense to us, and leveraging these parts to colour in our inconsistencies. What is most alluring to me is when this equation is ever so slightly off. Oftentimes the celebrities with the most rapturous audiences are figures who, purposely or unwittingly, seem uninterested in how this exchange should be orchestrated. This brings us to the interview. For what it is worth, I sympathize with Barbara in this interview. The director, George Cukor, once said, "I don't weep or anything, but there's some part of me left bloody on the scene I've just directed. The image of spilling out and splattering over, the idea of abandoning the parts of me that didn't work and sharing the parts of me that do, the idea of there being a bodily cost to something as intangible and imprecise as communication, feels pertinent. I firmly believe that all important conversations are some iteration of, I can't explain to you what I'm feeling, because it is fundamentally ineffable, but if you would like to listen, I would like to try. In other words, all important conversations are a process of trial and error. And with a celebrity interview, these trials and their subsequent errors are inflated, as grand and obtuse as the people in frame, speaking. Am I saying that Barbara's earnest, "You know what spooning is, don't you?" is as sweet as it is bizarre? Maybe. She is translating her version of normality for an audience predisposed to treat her as abnormal, another side effect of celebrity. And Barbara Walters is trying to translate her subject's self-consciousness into a fully constructed human offering for her audience, an unfortunate side effect of being a journalist. James Brolin is mostly just sitting there, a side effect of being a man. The rest of us are balanced in between these three, catching the discarded phrases, nudges, glances. These are the tools which will help us sketch a more complete, albeit chaotic, image of everyone involved. And maybe this is what fascinates me so much about this interview. It is spotlighting one of the most controlling, and I don't mean to use that term disparagingly, people in the entertainment industry. We see her collecting all the fragments of her casual, Malibu-bound, jeans-clad persona and holding them in her well-manicured hands before anything can be grasped at, interpreted, and misinterpreted by a wary audience. So when she says,
"No, you just can't imagine it," but you have imagined it all your life, but then you can't imagine it because it's never happened, and then it happens, and then you can't imagine it. But then you imagined it all the time, but now it's here, so it's hard to imagine.
We know she is contorting herself, purposely removed from the moment and skimming over all possible translations of what she will say, the distant second person. As a result, we have this delightful non-statement, a kind of verbal equation riddled with tenses and incalculable, but sweet in its own meaningless sort of way. As the interview ends and Barbara walks away, we see her practically guffawing at James Brolin's half-hearted attempt at a joke. "You know, it's tough when you're satisfied," he mutters. We hear Barbara respond between laughs, "That's very funny." And with that, we are unceremoniously reminded that whatever piece Barbara left bloody on the scene she just directed was not her at all. But hey, it never is.
You know, it's tough when you're satisfied.
That's very funny.
Do you think it's difficult? Have you guys ever tried to write about yourselves? Beyond like a biography, like as in when people are like, you need like a bio, you know, for something.
Oh yeah. Who would ever ask
Not just that one.
You're getting one sentence from me.
And it's going on the website. Don't get it wrong. Just that one lowercase sentence. Yeah.
Was it all lowercase? I'm sorry.
No. It's staying just like that. I love it. I haven't quite figured out how to make the photograph lowercase, but it'll come out.
I think it's weirdly hard because, like, as writers, or at least like as a writer, I feel like I write stuff that's kind of about myself a lot because I'm always writing stuff about like how I interact with something or how I feel about something or things that are necessary and important and make up me. And I think a lot of that comes through when you write, but then when you actually have to write about yourself as an actual subject, not just like bits of you that influence a thing, it's suddenly like almost impossible and kind of embarrassing. And considering I would quite happily write about lots of other things and, you know, put it places, writing about me, I'm always like,
Yeah, I get that. I think there's something about writing being like a limited medium where there's only so many words and there's only so long you can write for. And I guess there's something that when you're trying to write about someone else, there is a limitation there just in trying to understand someone else. You can only go like to a certain extent so far, maybe. So that kind of fits with the medium of writing. Whereas with yourself, there's something about it that's just like, oh, I don't want to try and do that. I don't want to delve into everything and try and put it into words which feel, I don't know, wrong.
That's interesting. I'd almost infer it like the opposite from that. You know, like you can, you know your own bounds. Like, you know.
That's true.
You know the boundaries of yourself, but you'll never, as you say, you'll never understand another person. So it's not like you could, at least to my mind, you could write forever about another person because there's infinite interpretation that can be taken. You can be like trying to understand someone for however many thousand words, but you might be able to sum yourself up in maybe 150 if you were really trying for it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's just me.
That's true. Yeah.
If you were writing a bio for yourself, would you be factual on it? Like, would you stick to like, hello, I have a degree and fact-based things, a driver's license? Or would you go for like or do you tend to do more like holistic representations, like, particularly as a writer, I'm thinking like, oh, I write about these kind of things and I feel like this a lot.
I would lie, but I'd also give them my passport number.
Buried in there.
Who is she?
I feel like I would freak myself out if I tried to capture anything beyond the facts, if that makes sense. Or if like I tried to present anything beyond just like my name is, my age is, whatever. So I don't know.
It's giving up so much control, I think, to other people to say, like anything beyond that. It's an immense vulnerability to give a sentence because you don't know how it's going to be interpreted by people who maybe don't know your tone or don't know kind of what you mean.
I think I found with writing this, actually, it was really, really hard. And I was trying to think of why it was hard. And I realized it's because most of the time I'm not writing like for a specific audience in the same way. Like, even if I'm writing something that is like a journalistic piece, when I'm actually writing it, most of the time I'm not thinking about the people reading it and reacting to it. Most of the time I'm thinking about, what is it that I'm trying to communicate, and go with that, and then deal with the audience part afterwards, like in drafts and edits. Whereas I found with this, partly because we were going to be like reading it to the people and they're going to see it, and also we know them, but I felt that I was constantly sort of thinking about these different, like, I was like, oh, I've got to be accurate about what I want to say and what I think about this person, but then also I've got to think about the fact that they're going to hear it, and think about the fact that it's not just also between me and them, it's also me introducing them to more generally other people. And that was quite having to think about writing in terms of audience is hard.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I have experience writing like profiles of people for like journalism, but not really experience doing anything creative. And there's something about like what you're saying with audience. I'm always thinking when I'm doing like a profile of someone, it's like you have to kind of find the center between who they say they are, what their work suggests they are, what other people say they are, and that, like, you're always trying to balance that. Whereas this was much more like interpretation, and that was interesting in terms of trying to think about audience in those different kind of
and because we're all doing it as well, there's sort of like you're thinking, well, what would I like that if someone said that about me? Is that like a nice, because like so much are like, I think this is a nice thing, but can I communicate that it's a nice thing and not like I'm like being, I don't know, you read into things a lot more and you're like, does this come across as critical?
Do you want to read your piece for Deirdre and she can catch it on the screen?
That certainly made us want to hear it more.
I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, it's sort of, I would say it's a work in progress because it was really hard to write, but not because of Deirdre, just because I think it's the style of it. So here you go. It's also like prose, but maybe sometimes I was going to say maybe sometimes prose poetry, but I don't really know what prose poetry is enough to say that this is it. So when I grow up, I want to be like Deirdre Kelly, an artist by her heart and a Fenian by her ears. In front of the whitewashed brick, she photographs red dress, red dungarees, red velvet textured scrunchies, red earrings, red scarf, red lips below a blue surgical mask. Red like the berries in the adverts for Ocean Spray Cranberry, fit to pop bang burst with summer smiles and cheer, not apologetic like yellow but present, here and real. That's Deirdre Kelly. The first Deirdre liked red too. Hers was the bright spill of a raven's kill against frozen ground, or the red of her lover's cheek in her palm. It makes me wonder if some lasting lastre passed down through the annals aneus. But perhaps that lies in myth. One thing to like about Deirdre is her stories. These few weeks we hear, Deirdre rides her Ulster cycle down the Golden Mile. She holds her breath because she's scared of the cars, and because she's real. Too real to define with words. She found the bike on Facebook Marketplace, and when she went down to meet the owner, it transpired he ran a whole shop full of bikes to sell. That was relieving, because it meant this bike must surefire be good quality and not some rusty thing just after sleeping in the garage. The bikeman's business depended on it. He was a friendly chap, keen to sell, but that's the climate, and more than chummy enough to get your government-approved chats in for the day. Her boyfriend has a bike as well. The bikeman says to him, "Ah, you have a bike yourself, have you? What kind of you?" But the boyfriend doesn't know. He isn't that kind of cyclist, which is one example of why they're a good match, but only one of many. This is when the bikeman tells the stabilizer's joke. "Well, I can sell you some of these then," jangling tiny wheels towards the pair. It's not really a joke, but he is joking. Deirdre laughs. Her boyfriend laughs. The bikeman laughs. Deirdre's boyfriend later says that the bikeman must make that joke all the time. Sure, he probably does, but where's the harm in laughing? One day she'll ride right along the Lisbon Road, passing tarmacked kings and queens on her way to Belfast. Not yet, though. Build up to it, Charlie. Keep going. Once, while eating toast that her boyfriend had made, Deirdre told us about crying in the chip shop. Deirdre has lots of jobs, possibly many at the same time, but some of them definitely at different times. She's like a big ball of double knit yarn all tangled together, so you don't quite know how many threads are in there, or what size they take. Thousands and thousands of thick red threads, all tied up into the shape of a person. That's one thing to like about her, but only one of many. Deirdre was working in the fish and chip shop one evening, and the place was pure packed. Deirdre works the tills and the customers, who are usually more difficult than the frying fishes. A policeman turned up for his order, but all was delayed. The fish wasn't in. It would be another 15 minutes yet. "But I've to start a shift," says the policeman. "I'm sorry," says Deirdre. What else is there to say? In the grand scheme of things, what matter is someone else's fish. But the man shouts, and so Deirdre goes to tell the cooks. She needs a breath and goes to take one. It's never nice to be shouted at for doing your best. Cook your own damn fish supper. Deirdre cries in the back because it's bloody hard work and shouting policemen melt us into little girls again, even though we're real adults now. It's just all a bit much sometimes, and it's best to just let it out, as the Belfast crowds well know. But when she comes back, the fish still isn't in the fryer, and the angry shouting policeman is still angry and still shouting. I think Deirdre leaves them. And when she tells me this, I think, good on her. It takes a lot of balls to walk out on a shift, and she is ballsy. That's one thing to commend her for, but only one of many. I imagine her closing up the book on her table and thinking, so much for good wives. Little fierce women have a lot more excitement. Deirdre tells us these stories of chip shops and bike buying and policemen and her wee mammy who's a dote. And they're familiar as a warm mug of tea that you drink at your mum's kitchen table. As real as losing your breath on the way to work, all bundled up in coats and half running to make up time. But they play out when she tells them, like movies in my head. A puppet show of little paper dolls that catch at my heart and pull me into their world, because really it's my world too. Deirdre Kelly tells stories with her soul, so that they reach down inside you and take root, your own history as well as hers. that's another reason to like her. But it really is just one of many.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Sorry, that was surprisingly long when I read it.
Oh,
No, it's good though.
It was brilliant. I don't even think Deirdre herself could have described Deirdre any better. Oh.
Yeah.
I wish Deirdre was still here now after that as well.
Yeah, I know.
She can have that as a surprise. Surprise, Deirdre. There you go.
Lovely.
So lovely.
That was really lovely. I loved how you brought it back with the red string at the end.
Yeah.
Deirdre is great at telling stories as well.
She's so good at telling stories. Like,
She is.
she's just, and she always comes on the stream, and she always comes on. She goes, oh, I've been talking so much, like, oh, but she's literally like, she tells these stories, and they're so, they feel so like, engaging doesn't feel like a strong enough word, because that sounds like whenever you go to like a good lecture, but they're just she's very good at just capturing stuff, I think.
Enchanting, I feel.
Yeah,
Enchanting.
that's it.
Part 5 of Applied Experimental Poetry, Mathematics in C minor. All this to divorce simulation from computer. In one sense, art is a form of simulation, clear to those with understanding of the structures of visual thought. Mathematics is simulation too. Last night, when I thought about math, I attuned, like a vibration attunes, and in my inner ear I heard the bells. Function of x equals ab squared might be translated to a flute, notes rising into gaseous clouds of dust, the oscillations of an impossible wind in space. But this would be an imperfect translation. I'm not fluent in the language of imagery. I was learning mathematics, but when I asked my teachers, they couldn't tell me what the category of math is. I've decided that math is a language, but language might just as easily be a math. Edward Glissant reminds us, hierarchy is a scam. He tells us, the metric by which we categorize difference is skewed. That is, it has an unfair relationship to better, worse, and the sublime. I.e., someone else's plan for a normal world at my expense might impoverish all other systems of creation if we let it. More or less. It begs the question, who benefits from a trickle-down approach? What Glissant actually says is, I understand your difference. Or in other words, without creating a hierarchy, I relate it to my norm. I admit you to existence within my system. I create you afresh. But perhaps we need to bring an end to the very notion of a scale, displace all reduction. Relationships with numbers are maddening to nuance, even as numerical relationships are complex. Yes, 1 equals 1. Nevertheless, I'm tired of shitty definitions of equal. An exercise, 1, 2, 3, indicates a relationship of hierarchy. But what of a rhizome, my enmeshed hands, a symphony of branches in that same numerical configuration? Experimental poetics can be allowing words out of the mouth and letting your mind catch up to meaning, the same way I can only imagine experimental mathematics. I must believe it has the potential to chart the relationship of forms of relation so abstract, numbers must stand for variables we cannot yet imagine. If I read the same passage of Kuno's exercises in German as in English, I become aware in translation of vital linguistic structures as modulated by another person, which might be the same process in terms of the function as machine. In the orientation of my scant Deutsch, I learn too the configuration of unknowing, of understanding less than I know there is. For instance, I wish I understood music enough to interpret the specific location of mathematics in C minor, but open windows invite people in, the same way clickbait is flagrant. How many musical notes exist? I asked CY. They asked me back, what is notation? In the YouTube comments of a piece I am listening to made for the piano, someone has written, arranging it for the symphonic orchestra is very difficult. This is orchestra accompanying a piano recital, the orchestra playing second fiddle, pun intended, to the pianist. Loved it. Someone else in the comments said, This is awful, not only heretic, the composer would kill the arranger. The musicians are swaying gently with their instruments, cupped palms around the pianist. Instruments and conversation is a powerful relationship, a balance with a different metric for pleasing than right or wrong. But instruments still have relationships of domination, only they open possibilities for understanding domination and what is not so destructive as domination. The ear can hear beyond the music that is present, simulate what comes next. But these days, pop personalities might be the more obvious signifier for music as a power struggle amidst the music. I learned new ways to explain from Meme Bassenbrugger, learned relation from Glissant. I can't wait to come to the Tao. I also admired what Noir Alcidier wrote at the opening of Fourth Person Singular. The door to my interior was propped open and a fly buzzed in. I ask, where did the fly go? But to sum up, or total, any experience might be a simulation when the object of discovering one specific variable's location in the complex context of the world is removed. Outside the parameters, the matter I deem essential is incidental. Clarice Lispector knows something of the interior simulation process. She knows about closed circles. In Near to the Wild Heart, I slide from one truth to the next, always forgetting the first, always dissatisfied. Her life was made up of complete little lives, of whole, closed circles, which isolated themselves from one another. She also says, I carry on, always inaugurating myself, opening and closing circles of the past. Why so independent? Why don't they just merge into one block, providing me with ballast? But people are discrete. We are information technology with variables like mood that change the outcome, cyborgs in the abstract. I'm trying to pull simulation from the arms of the computer, but I might accomplish a similar goal by trying to humanize the machine. At this point, I would like to issue a disclaimer. Please don't accuse me of the stereotypical sin, which is over-identifying with the machine. Not to simplify too far. In this context called The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula Le Guin, the machine is called the dream machine, or the augmenter. It doesn't perform a function, only enables it. The machine opens reality for the dreams of the humble to take precedence. The machine is described as an electric forest. Le Guin writes, many patients were either scared of machinery or over-identified with it. Lately I have been trying to be fearless. I printed out a photograph of Clarice and put it right across the room so she looks me in the eye. I think about how she called up a man who wrote to her on Christmas Eve to tell him, "You are very fearful, and no one writes in fear." Though I might be crazy, not fearful, that's no excuse not to talk to me. Sometimes simplifying acts poetically too. See how the word holds it all. Simulation, simulation, simulation. Come on. I'm excited to hear what you have to say about Anna.
God, well, it's really a story in 3 parts because I could decide really how to. For the viewers at home, I've not actually met Anna outside the little tiny rectangle of my laptop, so I really had to do a lot of digging and a lot of imaginative work to try and capture who she might be. And only now have I recognized these pictures behind you, which might have inspired me somewhat. But we'll run with what I've got. So, where are we? Here we go. Are we sitting comfortably? Okay. Anna McKibben, first of her name, I presume, stands straight-backed on a grassy knoll kissed golden by the setting sun, surveying all that lies beneath her. Hollywood. Nothing in her sight can stand against her, not with pen in hand. She advances into the fray. Sorkin charges and is quickly dispatched with a single stroke and splay of ink. What does it matter how a man falls down, he whimpers, sinking to his knees. When this is the only way you seem to be able to write a man falling down, it matters a great deal, Anna replies, wiping his blood from the nib. She rises to find 3 sailors approaching, white-clad and light on their feet. A silent deliberation ensues between them. Friend or foe? Anna has heard tell of their ways, and so sheaths her pen before tapping a simple rhythm with her feet on the dry, packed earth. The sailors, a smile touching at the corners of their mouths, reply by matching her movement and adding their own sweet shuffle. The parties now ingratiated to one another, the three fall into cheery lockstep behind her. Anna marches on through the Hollywood wasteland to make enemy or ally of any who she sets her sights upon. Sadly, due to the pandemic, I haven't had the opportunity to meet Anna in person, but I'm assuming that she's armor-clad near every waking minute, which I hope the preceding fiction has done justice toward. A Joan of Arc marching on to find and crown the next monarch of modern cinema. I want to thank Anna for expressing her complicated relationship with the writing of Aaron Sorkin, as I noted previously. I thought I might have been the only one to keep going back to a man who isn't good for me, only good to me. It's good to know I'm not alone in the camp of, Jesus Christ, this show got a script that just won't quit. But please, Mr. Sorkin/President, you truly are our moral compass. Won't you please pass a piece of legislation that protects the working class from the predatory nature of globalized neoliberalism? No. What about a single female character that doesn't require a man for the exploration of her driving characteristic? Another no. What about, oh, you quit after the fourth season. Fine, right, I got you, okay. Anna, I apologize in advance for the sheer number of hours that we will have to discuss this matter further. In that spirit, and in the spirit of not knowing you too well, other than your abundance of smarts and patience, I have prepared a list of things I should have asked in preparation for writing the piece that I'm currently reading. What are your thoughts on the superhero craze and its effects on our socio-political discourse? Have you seen Metropolis, by the way? Did you enjoy it? What do you think it says in relation to Weimar Germany as an oh-so-short-lived republic? On that note, what do you think that cinema can do that other mediums can't? Why does cinema hold such a special place in your heart? Are there any no-no films for you? Anything you should anything you should steer well clear of? Woody Allen, maybe? That's a pretty safe bet. What about Cafe Society, though? I kind of like Cafe Society. Have you seen Cafe Society? I can't exactly put my finger on why I like Cafe Society, but I think it's kind of a better version of La La Land, that's for damn sure. Oh, and while we're on La La Land, what about musicals? Are you into musicals? Why do you think their popularity dwindled? Do you think we'll see a reemergence of the form, or do you think we require some sort of cultural upheaval toward a universal optimism before we get Daniel Day-Lewis and Tap Shoes singing a number written and choreographed by Cardi B? I hope that those are enough for now, but if you have any questions for me about any of those questions for you, then please feel free to ask. I'm sure that my A will simply be another Q. I look forward to knowing you more. That's me.
That was so nice.
It was a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, that was really good. I was so nervous when you were like, how many times have you watched The West Wing? I was like, God, I can't convey to you my complicated relationship with this show. But I'm glad that you have the same thing.
Oh yeah, God, yeah.
Hello, this is a short story called Tara Scanlon, Korean Hallyan. Then one day, in the middle of dinner, my family started speaking in Korean. I'm not sure how I know it was Korean. I had never been to Korea, nor had they. Through my sister's increasingly frustrated gesticulation, I briefly discovered the Korean word for salt. I couldn't keep it in my head. It went on for days. Dad started singing traditional Korean hymns as he prepared dinner in the evenings. With her feet up in the living room, Mum shouted for water or tea or whiskey, and it was only through my lifetime of prior proximity to her daily regime that I knew when to bring what. I found it all very alienating. I spent a few days earnestly trying to communicate with phonetic transcriptions that I read from my screen, but I doubt the intonation was right. I couldn't store even simple words in my memory. At school, in languages, I had been mediocre and disinterested. I tried to find answers on the internet, to no avail. Dinner became more distressing with each passing day as, pale and sunken-eyed, I silently slurped my stew while they babbled incoherently. At least, it was incoherent to my ears. They all seemed to understand each other perfectly. Between the other members of my family, it was as if nothing had changed. They even seemed to understand me perfectly. Or maybe they didn't. But they didn't seem in the least bit perturbed when I asked them, "Why are you all speaking in Korean? Is it in fact Korean that you are all now speaking in?" Sometimes they laughed as if to say, "Good one, Tara." Sometimes someone else followed my questions with a comment, and when they all laughed, I felt that it was at my expense. Had they changed somehow? Had I? Was I losing my mind? At work, it was mostly fine. On the tills, the customers and I understood each other. I tried not to think about it, and mindfully swiped each item. When I told them the total, "That's $13.75, for example. Do you have a loyalty card?" and they paid in cash, I calculated the change in my head instead of tapping it into the tills as we're supposed to do. The casual challenge of mental arithmetic helped pass the days. Sometimes, though, especially when refilling shelves, a customer came up behind me and asked a question in Greek or in Hebrew. I would turn and say, "Excuse me?" and they'd repeat, except this time in familiarly slanty English, "I'm looking for them wee gluten-free buns yous do." Another time, "Ca will two of the honey?" "Sorry? Have yous wild blossom honey?" I was really freaking out, so I decided to guinea pig Karen. Normally, when she would come over on a Friday night, we would swiftly greet my parents and spend the entire evening in my room. This evening, when she arrived, I suggested we sit at the table and eat with the rest of my family. I tried to gauge her expression, watching closely for signs of alarm, bemusement, or confusion while she picked at her lamb chops. Dad told a long-winded story, or a joke perhaps, because at the end Mum and Sarah laughed. It was weird, bordering on offensive, I thought, that even their laugh was different. Dad teasingly elbowed my ribs. Mum and Sarah seemed to argue about something, and Sarah stormed off, leaving half of her plate. All of this was par for the course, except for the fact that it was performed entirely in Korean. Later in bed, I subtly questioned Karen. "What did you think of this evening, then?" "It was weird enough. Pretty fucking strange, actually. What was that all about?" "Oh my god, I know. I'm so relieved you can hear it too. I thought I was losing my mind. And they've been going on like that for weeks now, Karen." "Going on like what?" "What's that? What are you talking about?" Well, hang on. What did you think was weird?" "Well, I thought it was pretty weird that you made us eat dinner with your family. Don't you remember that we always eat in private, alone, where no one else can see us? That's like our thing." A sweat across my brow, down my back, under my nails. I was so self-conscious the whole time, Karen continued. "I could barely eat. You can be really thoughtless sometimes." She turned away from me in the bed and reached for the lamp. I felt unbearably hot, like I might throw up, and I pushed the covers off and sat up. "I'm really sorry, Karen. I wasn't thinking. Are you okay?" She treated me to a blank response. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "Just one thing, though. Was there anything else that you thought was strange or interesting about this evening?" Using the impatient flap at the back of the pallet, Karen emitted a guttural sigh and rustled her position in the bed. "Good night, Tara." "Okay," I replied weakly as I got out of bed. I'm just going to get some water. Good night. I still couldn't say for sure if they had changed or I. The test with Karen had been inconclusive. She would be exactly the type, not to mention that your whole family had been speaking in Korean all evening. Firstly, she's just too well-mannered to talk about my family like that. Secondly, like me, she has a tendency to get lost in her head. I wondered if she had even noticed. Without outright asking her if she could hear them speaking in Korean, something I wasn't prepared to do, the test would remain inconclusive. I wondered if I'd had an aneurysm. I imagined some process in my brain had, in the course of its regular progression, inadvertently caused an irreparable error. Perhaps it was a tumour in the language centre of the brain. I wanted answers, but I was too terrified of the potential consequences to ask the question. To drown out the shrill tin orchestra of the hold music, I counted the passage of time. A second one, a third, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6, a 7 and 8 and a 9, and back. I waited all these seconds so that I could be patronised by a doctor. Listen, Miss Scanlon, I'm sorry, but I can't get you into the hospital for a brain scan unless I believe there's a good reason to do so. Could you just explain to me, pet, why do you... I hung up. I wasn't playing her game. It wasn't worth it. The weeks that my family had been speaking in Korean became months. That spring, it didn't rain for 48 consecutive days. Karen and I went for walks in the forest in the evenings. One day, I came back from a weekend at hers and caught up with my parents for a few minutes in the kitchen. I got up to my room and laughed out loud when I realised they had been speaking Korean. I hadn't even noticed. And I started to think, what's the harm? A unique situation, fine. It was different. But was it bad? The other members of my family were still always telling me things. Dad's multi-directional stories, Mum's yarns of woe, Sarah's incessant whinging. They used to drive me up the wall. Now, it was like smooth jazz in an elevator. It softened the transitions from stacking shelves to my bedroom. I spent more time in the kitchen. I slept excellently. At the dinner table, I was laughing at all of Dad's jokes. I didn't understand a word he was saying, but more often than not I was finding them genuinely funny. My acne was noticeably better. My headaches were less frequent. The job I had hated became bearable. I was even promoted to assistant manager. Things with Karen had never been better. We spent most of our weekends in her flat in town. Half of my stuff now lived there. Karen and I saved our money and went on a 3-month trip around South America. My favourite part was hiking in the Peruvian Andes. I learned that the Incans had a method of storing potatoes using freezing and dehydration that had a shelf life of 10 years. It made me think of the law of unintended consequence. The colonial spread of the plant. The unfortunate separation of the plant from this fascinating know-how. The Irish famine. They told us that the tomato comes from South America as well, not Italy, and we completely lost our shit. In Chile, we went to a town by the sea where every wall had been covered in graffiti, and we took lots of photos. I came home to a family that still spoke Korean, and this mystery became a part of my life. There's something about going to another continent and coming back that really makes home, home, whatever way things are when you get there. So I went online and I bought a beginner's textbook. I downloaded audiobooks. I found a tutor online and had weekly classes. I told Karen about them, but never divulged the true reason. Eventually, we went on another trip. I attended a language school 5 days a week, and at the weekend we got out of the city. Karen agreed that it was a gorgeous peninsula. We weren't away long before it was time to come back again. As I had always suspected, Dad's jokes were in fact not very funny. I still laughed along though. Mum and Sarah bickered incessantly over the same things as always, and I saw that they were simply far too alike not to argue. Finally, I was ready. I took a deep breath, prepared the words, and focused on my intonation. Mother, can you pass the salt?
Thank you for coming. Is that a good outro? Thank you for coming. Bye.
Bye.
In my head, I just have the countdown theme. You know, the bit where it goes like, do 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 do.
Yeah.
Yeah.